The shuttle descended through clouds that glowed like purple fire. Kang Do-yun pressed his face against the small window, watching as the Valorian throne world revealed itself below. Crystal towers rose from the ground like frozen lightning, their surfaces catching the light of three distant suns. Gardens of bioluminescent flowers spread between the structures, painting the landscape in soft blues and greens. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And Do-yun was completely alone. He was 34 years old, born in a small town on Earth that most people had never heard of. He had no special talents, no powerful family connections, no remarkable abilities. He was simply a man who listened well and spoke kindly. Somehow that had been enough to make him a diplomat. Now he was Earth's junior ambassador to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, and he had never felt smaller in his entire life. The Valorians were an ancient race. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds, and their queens had ruled for tens of thousands of years. They were insectoid in appearance, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like shattered mirrors. They communicated through a telepathic network called the hive mind, sharing thoughts and feelings across vast distances. To them, humans were children. Worse than children. They were primitive creatures who lived brief, chaotic lives and died before they could learn anything of true value. Do-yun knew all of this. He had studied for months before this assignment, learning everything he could about Valorian culture, history, and customs. But nothing had prepared him for the weight of their ancient eyes upon him, the quiet disdain that followed him wherever he walked. The shuttle landed softly on a platform of polished stone. A delegation of Valorian officials waited to greet him, their tall forms draped in robes of woven light. They towered over Do-yun, looking down at him the way a person might look at an insect crawling across their floor. The irony was not lost on him. "Welcome to Valoria Prime, human ambassador," the lead official said. Her voice was musical but cold, like wind chimes made of ice. "The Empress will receive you tomorrow. Until then, you will be shown to your quarters." There was no warmth in her words, no genuine welcome. Do-hyun was a duty to be handled, nothing more. He bowed politely, keeping his face calm and pleasant. He had learned long ago that anger solved nothing, and pride was a luxury he could not afford. His quarters were beautiful but isolating. The rooms were designed for Valorian bodies with ceilings too high and furniture too large. Do-hyun felt like a child playing in an adult's house. He sat on the edge of an enormous bed, his feet dangling above the floor, and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake in accepting this position. But there was no going back now. Earth needed this alliance. Humanity had only recently joined the Galactic Concord, the federation of spacefaring species that governed most of known space. They were the youngest race, the newest members, and many of the elder species saw them as little more than barbarians who had accidentally discovered faster-than-light travel. The Valorian Empire was one of the most powerful factions in the Concord. If Earth could build a relationship with them, it would change everything. That night, Do-yun could not sleep. He walked through the palace gardens instead, breathing air that smelled of flowers he could not name. The bioluminescent plants cast soft light across his path, and for a moment he almost forgot how alone he was. Then he heard a sound. It was soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Someone was crying. Do-yun followed the sound through a maze of crystal hedges until he found a small clearing. There, sitting on a bench carved from a single piece of gemstone, was a Valorian. She was smaller than the others he had seen, more delicate in her features. Her 4 arms were wrapped around herself, and her compound eyes were wet with tears that glowed faintly in the darkness. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her body went rigid with fear. Do-hyun stopped immediately, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I did not mean to disturb you. I will leave if you wish." The Valorian stared at him for a long moment. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something. Disgust, perhaps, or pity, or the cold dismissal she was clearly accustomed to receiving. Do-yun simply waited, his expression gentle and patient. "You are the human," she finally said. Her voice was softer than the other Valorians, less certain. "The ambassador." "Yes, my name is Kang Do-yun. And you are?" She hesitated, as if surprised that he had asked. I am Seraphil, daughter of Empress Velith. Doyun's eyes widened slightly. He was speaking to a princess. He immediately bowed low, showing proper respect. Your Highness, forgive me, I did not know. Please stop, Seraphil said quickly. Please do not bow. Do not, do not treat me as others do. There was such pain in her voice that Doyun straightened immediately. He looked at her again, really looked, and saw something he recognized. Loneliness. The deep, aching loneliness of someone who had been set apart from everyone around them. Would you like company? He asked simply. I find myself unable to sleep, and the gardens are very beautiful. If you would prefer to be alone, I understand. But if not, I would be honored to sit with you for a while. Seraphil stared at him as if he had spoken in a language she did not understand. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. No one had ever offered her simple companionship without expectation or agenda. Why? She whispered. Why would you want to sit with me? Do you not know what I am? Doyun tilted his head slightly confused. You are a princess. You are a person sitting alone in a garden at night. Beyond that, I know nothing. But I would like to, if you would allow me. For a long moment, Seraphil said nothing. Then slowly she moved to one side of the bench, making room for him to sit. Doyun sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Above them, 3 moons hung in a purple sky, and the gardens glowed softly all around them. They did not speak for a long time. They simply sat together, 2 lonely souls in the vast emptiness of space, finding comfort in the simple knowledge that they were not entirely alone. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. Something that would change the fate of empires and echo across the stars for generations to come. But in that moment, it was simply 2 people sharing silence in a garden, and that was enough. In the days that followed, Doyun learned the truth about Princess Seraphil. He learned it not from her, for she was too ashamed to speak of it, but from the whispers that followed him through the palace halls. The servants talked when they thought he could not hear. The officials spoke carelessly in his presence, assuming a human could not understand the subtle meanings beneath their words. But Doyun had always been good at listening, and what he heard broke his heart. Seraphil had been born wrong. That was the word they used. Wrong, defective, broken. Among the Valorians, every individual was connected to the hive mind from the moment of birth. It was their greatest treasure, their defining characteristic as a species. Through the hive mind, they shared thoughts and emotions across vast distances. They were never truly alone, never isolated, always part of something greater than themselves. It was beautiful in its way, Dohyun thought, a kind of unity that humans could only dream of. But Seraphil had been born without this connection. Some genetic accident, some twist of fate, had left her deaf to the voices that filled every other Valorian's mind. She could not hear the songs of her people. She could not feel the warmth of their collective consciousness. She existed in silence, alone inside her own head, cut off from everything that made a Valorian whole. To her people, she was less than nothing. She was a broken thing, a source of shame for the royal family. For over 200 years, she had lived in the shadow of the Crystal Palace, ignored by her mother, pitied by the servants, and rejected by every potential mate who had been presented to her. No Valorian male of status would bond with a female who could not join the hive mind. She would be a dead end, a silence in the great song of their species. The Empress had tried to solve the problem in other ways. She had offered Seraphil to allied species as a political bride, hoping to at least gain some benefit from her defective daughter. But word of Seraphil's condition had spread, and one by one every offer had been refused. No one wanted a broken princess. No one saw value in a silent voice. Doyun thought about this as he walked through the palace preparing for his formal audience with the Empress. He thought about what it must be like to grow up surrounded by people who saw you as a mistake. He thought about the loneliness in Seraphil's eyes, the way she had flinched when he first approached her, expecting rejection before he had even spoken. He found her again that evening, in the same garden where they had first met. She was sitting on the same bench, her forearms folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the glowing flowers before her. "May I join you?" Doyun asked. Seraphil looked up and something flickered across her face. surprise perhaps, or hope. You came back. I said I would. People say many things. They rarely mean them. Do-yoon sat beside her, settling into what was becoming a comfortable routine. On Earth, we have a saying, a person's word is their bond. When I make a promise, I keep it. Seraphil was quiet for a moment. What is Earth like? And so Do-yoon told her. He spoke of blue skies and green forests, of oceans that stretch beyond the horizon, and mountains that touch the clouds. He told her about rain, about the way water fell from the sky and made everything smell fresh and new. He told her about snow, about how children would run outside to catch the white flakes on their tongues and build figures from the frozen water. Seraphil listened with her whole body, leaning toward him, her compound eyes wide with wonder. It sounds beautiful, she said softly. It sounds alive. It is, and messy, and chaotic, and wonderful. Do-yoon smiled. Humans are not like Valorians. We do not share one mind. Every single person is different, with their own thoughts, their own dreams, their own way of seeing the world. Sometimes this causes problems. We argue, we fight, we misunderstand each other constantly. That sounds terrible. Sometimes it is, but it also means that every connection we make is a choice. When a human loves someone, it is not because they are joined by biology or telepathy. It is because they looked at another person and decided of their own free will that this person matters to them. There is something precious in that, I think. Seraphil was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Among my people, I am considered defective because I cannot join the hive mind. I am alone in my own head, separated from everyone else. They see this as a curse. Do-hyun turned to look at her directly. And what do you see it as? The question seemed to strike her like a physical blow. No one had ever asked her that before. No one had ever considered that she might have her own opinion about her own existence. I do not know, she admitted. I have spent so long being told what I am that I have never stopped to ask myself. On Earth, Do-hyun said gently, we have many people who are born different from others. Some cannot see, some cannot hear, some think in ways that others do not understand. For a long time, we treated these people poorly. We called them broken, defective, less than human. But we learned slowly and painfully that we were wrong. Wrong? Different is not the same as broken. A person who cannot see often develops hearing so sharp they can navigate the world by sound alone. A person who thinks differently might see solutions that no one else can imagine. What looks like weakness from one angle might be strength from another. Seraphil shook her head slowly. You do not understand. Without the hive mind, I am incomplete. I am missing a part of myself that every other Valorian possesses. Or, Do-hyun said softly, you have something that no other Valorian possesses. Complete individuality. Your thoughts are entirely your own. Your feelings are entirely your own. You are not influenced by the collective, not shaped by the expectations of 1,000 minds pressing against yours. You are, perhaps, the most truly free Valorian who has ever lived. Seraphil stared at him, tears forming in her glowing eyes. No one has ever said anything like that to me. Then I am honored to be the first. They sat together in the garden until the 3 moons had crossed the sky, talking about everything and nothing. Do-hyun told her stories of human history, of people who had been rejected and scorned only to rise up and change the world. Seraphil spoke hesitantly about her own life, about the centuries of isolation, about the dreams she had never dared to share with anyone. When they finally parted, Seraphil reached out and touched Do-hyun's hand with one of her own. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone, but her grip was gentle. Thank you, she said, for seeing me, not as a broken princess, not as a political problem, just as me. Do-hyun bowed his head. It is easy to see what is already there. You are remarkable, Seraphil. I hope one day you will see it too. He walked back to his quarters with a strange warmth in his chest, not knowing that their quiet conversations had already been noticed, and that forces far greater than either of them were beginning to move. Empress Valeth had ruled the Velorian Empire for 3,000 years. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had watched stars die and new ones be born. She had made decisions that affected trillions of lives across 1,000 worlds, and she had done so without hesitation, without doubt, without mercy, when mercy was a weakness she could not afford. She sat upon her throne now, a massive structure grown from living crystal that pulsed with the light of the hive mind itself. Around her, advisors and generals communicated through their telepathic bond, sharing information faster than spoken words could ever travel. Reports flowed through her consciousness like rivers merging into a great ocean. War was coming. The Zorath Dominion, a rival faction within the Galactic Concord, had been building its forces along the borders of Valorian space. Their intentions were clear. They wanted war, and they believed the Valorian Empire had grown soft over the millennia. They were not entirely wrong. The Empire had been at peace for too long. Their fleets were powerful but had not seen true combat in generations. Their soldiers were well-trained but untested. If the Zorath attacked with full force, the outcome was uncertain. Veleth needed allies. She needed fresh blood, new perspectives, species that could adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Her ancient eyes turned toward the humans. They were such strange creatures. They lived for barely a century, sometimes less, burning through their brief existences with an intensity that older species found almost exhausting. They bred quickly, adapted faster, and seemed to possess an almost irrational refusal to accept defeat. In the short time since they had joined the Galactic Concord, they had proven themselves unexpectedly capable. Their technology was crude but inventive. Their soldiers were untested but fearless. And their diplomats, for all their youth and inexperience, showed a strange talent for understanding other species. Veleth had been watching the human ambassador since his arrival. Kang Do-yun was unremarkable by most standards. He possessed no special abilities, no political power, no military strength. He was simply a quiet man who listened more than he spoke and treated everyone he met with genuine respect. And yet somehow he had done something that no one else had managed in 200 years. He had made Seraphil smile. Veleth observed her daughter through the eyes of servants who watched them in the gardens. She saw the way Seraphil leaned toward the human when he spoke, the way her compound eyes brightened when he approached. For the first time in centuries, her broken daughter seemed almost happy. An idea began to form in the Empress's ancient mind, a cold, calculating idea that served multiple purposes at once. She summoned the human ambassador to a private audience. Do-hyun entered the throne room alone, as she had commanded. The chamber was vast, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant before the power of the Valorian throne. Columns of living crystal rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow, and the walls themselves seemed to breathe with the pulse of the hive mind. Do-hyun walked the long path toward the throne without flinching. His steps were calm and measured, his face composed. Veleth watched him approach with grudging respect. Most beings trembled when summoned to her presence. This human merely looked curious. "Ambassador Kang," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Thank you for answering my summons." Do-hyun bowed low. "I am honored by the invitation, Your Majesty. You may dispense with formalities. I have called you here for a specific purpose, and I value efficiency over ceremony." Veleth rose from her throne, her massive form unfolding to its full height. She was nearly 3 meters tall, her carapace gleaming like polished obsidian, her forearms folded behind her back. "You have spent considerable time with my daughter." It was not a question. Do-hyun did not pretend otherwise. "I have, Your Majesty. Princess Seraphil is excellent company." "Excellent company." Veleth's compound eyes reflected the ambient light like shattered mirrors. An interesting way to describe a defective princess that even the lowest noble houses refused to bond with. Do-hyun's expression did not change, but something hardened in his eyes. "With respect, Your Majesty, I do not believe the princess is defective. She is different. Those are not the same thing." Veleth studied him for a long moment. "You are either very brave or very foolish to contradict me in my own throne room." "Perhaps both, Your Majesty. I have been accused of worse." Despite herself, Veleth felt a flicker of amusement. This small creature had more fire in him than most beings she had met in the past 1,000 years. Perhaps that was why her daughter was drawn to him. I will be direct with you, Ambassador. The Valorian Empire faces a potential war with the Zorth Dominion. I need allies, and humanity has shown itself to be more capable than I initially believed. An alliance between our peoples would benefit us both. Do-hyun nodded slowly. Earth would welcome such an alliance, Your Majesty. Our diplomatic corps has been authorized to negotiate terms whenever you are ready. I am not interested in negotiating with your diplomatic corps. Velith descended from her throne, her steps impossibly light for a being of her size. She stopped directly before Do-hyun, looming over him like a mountain. I am interested in a more permanent arrangement. I do not understand. You are unmated, are you not? Without a wife, without children, without bonds that tie you to another? That is correct, Your Majesty. Velith's voice dropped, becoming almost soft. My daughter is also unmated. She has been offered to many potential partners over the centuries, and all have refused her. She is a burden I have carried for 200 years, a problem with no solution. She paused. Until now. Do-hyun felt ice form in his stomach as he began to understand where this conversation was leading. A marriage between you and Seraphel would bind humanity to the Valorian Empire, Velith continued. It would be a symbol of alliance that neither side could easily break, and it would solve the problem of my daughter once and for all. You wish to give your daughter to me, Do-hyun said slowly, like a gift, like property. I wish to offer you an opportunity that no human has ever received, marriage to a Valorian princess, elevation to a status far above your birth, a place in history as the bridge between two great peoples. Velith's compound eyes fixed on his. So I ask you directly, Ambassador Kang, do you desire my daughter? The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Do-hyun stood in silence, feeling the weight of it pressing down upon him. He thought of Seraphel in the garden, her tears in the moonlight, her wonder as he described the reign of earth. He thought of her loneliness, her pain, her centuries of being treated as nothing more than a problem to be solved, and he felt something rise within him that he had not expected. Not desire, not ambition, not political calculation, anger, cold, quiet, righteous anger. He looked up at the Empress of 1,000 worlds, this ancient being who had lived for 3,000 years, and he prepared to give an answer that would change everything. The silence in the throne room stretched like a wire pulled tight. Empress Velith waited, her ancient eyes fixed on the small human before her. She had seen this moment play out 1,000 times in her imagination. The human would either accept eagerly, grateful for the chance to elevate himself beyond anything his species could normally achieve, or he would refuse politely, confirming what she had always suspected about humans and their prejudices against other species. She was not prepared for what actually happened. Do-hyun stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady, but there was something beneath it, something that made even the Empress of 1,000 worlds pause. Your Majesty, he began, you have asked me if I desire your daughter. Before I answer, I need to make certain I understand the question correctly. Velith tilted her head slightly. The question is simple enough. With respect, Your Majesty, it is not. Do-hyun met her gaze without flinching. You are asking if I want to take your daughter as part of a political arrangement. You are asking if I want to receive her like cargo, like a gift wrapped in diplomatic ribbon, like a problem you are finally rid of. You are asking if I will participate in treating a living, breathing, feeling person as though she were nothing more than a bargaining chip on the table of empires. The temperature in the throne room seemed to drop. Velith's advisors, listening through the hive mind, went silent. No one had ever spoken to the Empress this way. No one had ever dared. You overstep, human, Velith said, her voice carrying a warning. Perhaps I do, Do-hyun agreed, but I have learned that some things are worth overstepping for. So let me give you my answer, Your Majesty, and let me be perfectly clear. He took a breath, and when he spoke again, every word carried weight like stones dropped into still water. I will not desire your daughter. Not in the way you mean. I will not take her from you like she is a prize to be won or a contract to be signed. She is not a burden to be transferred. She is not a problem to be solved. She is not defective, broken, or worthless. She is a person, Your Majesty. A person with thoughts and feelings and dreams and fears. A person who has spent 200 years being treated as less than nothing by the very people who should have loved her most. Veleth's compound eyes widened. Something flickered across her ancient face. Something that might have been shock or might have been the first stirrings of something else entirely. Doyun continued, his voice growing stronger. Where I come from, we believe that every person deserves to be chosen, not traded. We believe that love is not a transaction, not a negotiation, not a political tool. Love is a gift freely given, and it only has meaning when it comes from the heart rather than from calculation. Love? Veleth's voice was barely a whisper. You speak of love? I speak of basic dignity. I speak of the respect that every living being deserves simply by virtue of existing. Doyun's eyes never left hers. If Seraphel wishes to know me, to spend time with me, to walk beside me of her own free will, then I would be honored beyond measure. I would court her properly, Your Majesty, with patience, with kindness, with respect. I would bring her flowers and tell her stories and learn everything about who she is, not what she represents. I would give her the choice that she has never been given, the choice to accept or refuse me based on her own heart rather than political necessity. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was soft but filled with an emotion that Veleth could not name. Because that is what she deserves. That is what every person deserves. And if your empire, with all its power and all its wisdom, cannot understand that, then perhaps it is the empire that is defective, not your daughter. The words echoed through the vast chamber and then faded into silence. Empress Veleth stood frozen. In 3,000 years of life, she had received countless speeches, heard endless arguments, witnessed every form of persuasion and manipulation that sentient beings could devise. But she had never experienced anything like this. This small human, this brief flicker of existence that would be gone in a few decades, had just lectured her on the value of her own daughter. And the worst part, the part that cut deeper than any blade, was that he was right. She thought of Seraphil as a hatchling, small and perfect, cradled in her arms before they discovered the silence where the hive mind should have been. She thought of the hope draining from her heart as year after year passed and no connection formed. She thought of the moment she had stopped seeing Seraphil as her daughter and started seeing her as a problem. 200 years. For 200 years, she had allowed her child to suffer alone because she could not hear the voices that filled everyone else's mind. For 200 years, she had tried to trade her away like unwanted goods, never once asking what Seraphil wanted, what Seraphil felt, who Seraphil truly was beneath the label of defective. Something warm and wet slid down Veleth's face. She raised one hand to touch her cheek and felt moisture there. Tears. She was crying. The Empress of 1,000 worlds, the ruler of an ancient and mighty empire, was crying in her own throne room because a human had reminded her how to see her own daughter. You weep, Your Majesty, Doyun said gently, all anger gone from his voice. I did not mean to cause you pain. No, Veleth whispered. No, you meant to cause me truth, and truth often hurts more than any weapon. She looked at him with new eyes, seeing him properly for the first time. You truly care for her, not for what she could give you, not for the political advantages, but for her. I do. She is remarkable. Kind and thoughtful and brave in ways she does not even recognize. She has survived 2 centuries of loneliness without becoming bitter or cruel. Do you know how strong someone has to be to endure that and still have gentleness left in their heart? Veleth closed her eyes. I did not know. I never thought to look. It is not too late, Your Majesty. It is never too late to see someone clearly. It is never too late to choose love over convenience, connection over distance, family over politics. The Empress of the Valorian Empire stood in silence for a long moment. Then she did something she had not done in 1,000 years. She bowed her head to another being. You have given me much to consider, Ambassador Kang. More than you know. She straightened, and though tears still glistened on her face, her voice was steady. I will not force my daughter into anything. I will not trade her like property, but I will watch, human. I will watch how you treat her, how you speak to her, how you make her feel. And if you prove worthy, if you truly are the man you appear to be, then perhaps there is hope for an alliance of a different kind. One built on respect rather than transaction. Do-Yun bowed low. That is all I could ask, your majesty. Go now. I have much to think about. Velith turned away and her voice dropped so low that Do-Hyun barely heard her final words. And I have a daughter to visit, for the first time in far too long. After the human ambassador left, Empress Velith remained alone in her throne room for a long time. She dismissed her advisors, silenced the flow of information from the hive mind, and simply stood in the darkness, thinking about what had just happened. 3,000 years. She had lived for 3,000 years, ruled for most of them, seen empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. She had believed herself wise beyond measure, elevated above the petty concerns of lesser beings. And yet a human who would live for barely a century had seen something that she had missed for 200 years. Her daughter was not broken. Her daughter was alone. Velith walked through the palace halls with slow, heavy steps. Around her, servants pressed themselves against walls, surprised to see the Empress moving without her usual entourage. She paid them no attention. Her mind was elsewhere, lost in memories she had tried to forget. She remembered the day Seraphel was born, the joy she had felt when she held her hatchling for the first time, the tiny form so perfect and delicate. She remembered reaching out through the hive mind, expecting to feel her daughter's consciousness brush against her own, and finding only silence. The healers had been confused at first, then concerned, then apologetic. Something had gone wrong during development, they explained. Some genetic accident that had never occurred before in recorded Valorian history. The princess could not connect to the hive mind. She would never hear the voices of her people, never feel the warmth of the collective consciousness, never be truly Valorian in the way that mattered most. Velith remembered the shame she had felt, the anger, the desperate hope that it was a mistake, that the connection would form later, that somehow everything would be fine. She remembered the years of waiting, of specialists and treatments and experimental procedures, all of which failed, and she remembered the moment she stopped hoping and started accepting. Her daughter was defective. Her daughter was a problem. Her daughter was a burden. She had never said these words out loud, but she had thought them. She had thought them every time she looked at Seraphel and felt the absence of their bond. She had thought them every time a potential mate refused her daughter's hand. She had thought them every time she calculated the political cost of having a princess who could never truly represent the Valorian people. And Seraphel had known. Of course she had known. She might not be able to hear the hive mind, but she could read faces, interpret silences, feel the weight of disappointment in every interaction. For 200 years, her own mother had looked at her and seen a failure. Velith reached her daughter's chambers and stopped outside the door. Her hand hovered over the activation panel, trembling slightly. When had she last visited Seraphel's rooms? She could not remember. Decades, certainly. Perhaps longer. She pressed the panel and the door slid open. Seraphel was sitting by a window, looking out at the crystal towers of the city. She turned at the sound of the door, and her compound eyes widened with shock when she saw who had entered. "Mother?" Her voice was uncertain, almost frightened. "Is something wrong? Has something happened?" Velith felt those words like a knife to the heart. Her daughter's first assumption was that something must be wrong for her mother to visit. That was how far apart they had drifted. "Nothing is wrong," Velith said. "I simply wish to speak with you." Seraphel rose slowly, her posture tense and guarded. She did not approach her mother. She did not embrace her. She simply stood and waited, as she had learned to do over 200 years of rejection. The silence stretched between them, vast and painful. Velith realized that she had no idea what to say. She had prepared speeches for galactic councils, negotiated treaties with hostile empires, commanded fleets in battle, but she did not know how to talk to her own daughter. "I spoke with the human ambassador today," she finally said. "About you." Seraphel's expression flickered with something. Fear, hope. It was impossible to tell. He said things to me that no one has ever dared to say. Velith moved slowly into the room, closing the distance between them one step at a time. He called me out for treating you as a burden rather than a daughter. He told me that you were remarkable, that you were strong, that you deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. Do-hyun said that? Seraphel's voice was barely a whisper. He did, and he was right. Velith stopped directly before her daughter, close enough to touch but still not touching. I have failed you, Seraphel. For 200 years I have failed you in every way that matters. I looked at you and saw only what you lacked rather than what you possessed. I treated you as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. And I am sorry. The words came out rough and halting, unpracticed by 3 millennia of never needing to apologize for anything. But they were genuine, and Seraphel could see that. Mother! Tears began to form in Seraphel's compound eyes. I thought you hated me. I never hated you. I hated myself for not knowing how to help you. I hated the silence where our bond should have been. I hated my own failure as a mother, and I let that hatred poison everything between us. Velith reached out with one of her forearms and gently touched her daughter's face. But that was my weakness, not yours. You are not defective, Seraphel. You have never been defective. You are simply different, and different is not the same as broken. Seraphel let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. The human said the same thing to me. He said that I have something no other Valorian possesses. Complete individuality. He is wiser than his years would suggest. Velith pulled her daughter into an embrace, wrapping all 4 arms around her smaller form. I am sorry it took a stranger from another world to show me what I should have seen all along. I am sorry for every cold word, every dismissive glance, every failed attempt to trade you away like unwanted goods. I am sorry for 200 years of not being the mother you deserved. Seraphel clung to her, her whole body shaking with sobs she had held inside for longer than most species lived. I waited so long, she whispered. I waited so long to hear you say that. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost, if you will let me. They stood together in the fading light, mother and daughter, finally seeing each other clearly for the first time. Outside the window, the 3 suns of Valoria Prime began to set, painting the crystal towers in shades of gold and purple. It was beautiful, and for once, Seraphel was not watching it alone. Later, when the tears had dried and the silence had transformed from painful to peaceful, Seraphel asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Mother, what are you going to do about the Alliance, about the humans? Velith considered this for a long moment. I am going to wait and watch. The human ambassador has expressed interest in courting you properly, as he put it, with patience and kindness and respect. If you are willing to allow this, I will not interfere. Seraphel's compound eyes brightened. He truly said that? He did, and he was quite firm about it. A hint of amusement entered Velith's voice. He is an interesting creature, your human. He has a spine of steel hidden beneath that gentle exterior. I think he might be good for you. I think so too, Seraphel said softly. I think he already has been. Velith nodded slowly. Then we shall see what comes of it. But whatever happens, know this, my daughter. You will never be traded again. You will never be treated as a burden again. From this day forward, you are my child, my heir, my blood, and anyone who cannot see your value does not deserve you. It was not a perfect reconciliation. 200 years of pain could not be healed in a single evening, but it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings were enough. True to his word, Kang Do-yun courted Princess Seraphel properly. He did not rush, he did not pressure. He simply showed up, day after day, with small gifts and kind words, and an endless supply of patience. He brought her flowers from Earth's biodomes, strange blooms in colors she had never seen before. Red roses, white lilies, yellow sunflowers that seemed to carry the warmth of a distant star within their petals. He explained what each flower meant in human culture, how people had assigned meanings to plants for thousands of years, using them to say things that were too important for ordinary words. This one means friendship, he said, offering her a small yellow flower. And this one means admiration. And this one, he held up a deep red rose, means something that I am not yet ready to say out loud, but I wanted you to have it anyway. Seraphel learned to read human expressions, the subtle movements of their small features that conveyed so much meaning. She learned that a smile could mean happiness or nervousness or both. She learned that the way Do-hyun's eyes crinkled at the corners meant he was genuinely amused, while a tightness around his mouth meant he was worried about something. She learned that humans leaked their emotions constantly, unable to hide them the way Valorians did. And she found this incredibly charming. In return, she taught him about Valorian art. She showed him how her people sang without sound, creating music through the hive mind that she could only imagine but never hear. She showed him sculptures carved from living crystal that changed shape over centuries, and paintings made with light that shifted depending on the viewer's emotional state. She showed him the beauty of her world, the parts that she had been able to appreciate even from the outside. Their relationship became a quiet scandal throughout the palace. A human and a princess, walking together through gardens, sharing meals, laughing at jokes that no one else understood. The servants whispered, the nobles frowned, but Empress Valeth remained silent, watching from a distance, keeping her promise not to interfere. Word spread beyond Valoria Prime. Other species in the Galactic Concord began to pay attention to the strange courtship happening in the Crystal Palace. They watched with curiosity, and some with concern, as a member of the youngest species in the Concord pursued a princess of one of the oldest empires. They are so different, the Corthan ambassador commented at a diplomatic function. How can a being who lives for barely a century hope to understand someone who will live for millennia? Do-yun, who had overheard the comment, smiled politely. Perhaps that is exactly why I can understand her, he said. Humans know that time is precious because we have so little of it. We do not waste our years on politics and pretense. When we love fully because we know we might not get another chance. The ambassador had no response to that. Seraphel blossomed under Do-hyun's attention. The quiet, withdrawn princess began to speak more freely, to express opinions she had kept hidden for centuries. She discovered that she had a sharp sense of humor and a gift for seeing patterns that others missed. She discovered that her inability to connect to the hive mind had forced her to develop skills of observation and analysis that most Valorians never needed. She discovered that she was not broken. She was simply built for a different purpose. You have changed me, she told Do-hyun one evening as they walked through the gardens. Before you came, I spent my days trying to be smaller, quieter, less noticeable. I thought that if I could just disappear, the shame I caused would disappear with me. Do-hyun took her hand in his, a gesture that had become natural between them. And now? Now I want to be seen. I want to take up space. I want to do things and say things and be someone that matters. She paused. Is that selfish? That is human, Do-hyun said with a smile. Perhaps you have been one of us all along. But not everyone was pleased with the developing relationship. The Zorath Dominion, still preparing for potential war with the Valorian Empire, saw the alliance forming between Valoria and Earth with alarm. If those two powers united, it would shift the balance of power in the Galactic Concord dramatically. Something had to be done. Seraphel and Do-hyun were walking through a remote section of the palace gardens when the attack came. Three figures emerged from the shadows, their bodies wrapped in light-bending material that had made them nearly invisible. They were Zorath assassins, sent to eliminate the princess before the alliance could be formalized. The first shot came without warning, a beam of superheated plasma aimed directly at Seraphel's heart. Do-hyun did not think. He simply moved. He threw himself between Seraphel and the assassin, his body taking the full impact of the plasma bolt. The energy burned through his diplomatic uniform, searing into his chest, and he fell to the ground with a cry of pain. Seraphel screamed. The sound echoed through the gardens, alerting the palace guards who came running within seconds. The assassins, their mission failed, attempted to flee but were cut down before they could escape. But Seraphel paid them no attention. All her focus was on the human lying, crumpled on the ground, smoke rising from the wound in his chest. Do-hyun! Do-hyun, please! Stay with me! She knelt beside him, her forearms cradling his body, her compound eyes streaming with tears. Help! Someone help! Do-hyun's eyes fluttered open. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but he managed a weak smile when he saw her. Are you hurt? You fool, you absolute fool. Seraphel pressed her hand against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Why did you do that? Why did you jump in front of me? Because, Doyun coughed, and blood flecked his lips. Because you matter. Because losing you would be worse than losing myself. The guards arrived, followed by medical personnel who rushed to stabilize Doyun's condition. They transported him to the palace medical wing, where the best Valorian healers fought to save his life. Seraphel refused to leave his side, sitting vigil through the long hours of surgery and recovery. Empress Velith came to the medical wing as soon as she heard what had happened. She found her daughter sitting beside the human's bed, holding his unconscious hand, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and fear. He jumped in front of the weapon, Seraphel whispered. He did not hesitate, not even for a moment. He moved, and then he was falling, and I thought. She could not finish the sentence. Velith stood in silence, looking at the small human who had nearly died to protect her daughter. His vitals were stable now, the healers had assured them. He would survive. But it had been close. Very close. I have lived for 3,000 years, Velith said quietly. I have seen countless acts of courage and sacrifice, but I have never seen anyone move as quickly as he did. It was not calculation. It was not duty. It was instinct. The instinct of a being who cares more about another than about himself. He loves me, Seraphel said, and there was wonder in her voice. He really loves me. Yes, Velith agreed. He does. And I think you love him too. Seraphel looked at her mother, tears still falling from her compound eyes. I do. I love him more than I ever thought I could love anyone. Is that strange? Is it wrong? He is human. He will be gone in 50 or 60 years, and I will live for millennia without him. Velith placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Then you will have 50 or 60 years of happiness and millennia of beautiful memories. That is more than many beings ever receive. They waited together through the night, mother and daughter, watching over the human who had proven that love was not measured in years. Kang Doyun woke 3 days after the assassination attempt. His chest ached with a deep, burning pain, and his body felt like it had been drained of all strength. But when he opened his eyes and saw Seraphel sitting beside his bed, still holding his hand, still watching over him, he smiled. You look terrible, he said, his voice rough from disuse. Seraphel let out a laugh that was half sob. You nearly died. And that is the first thing you say to me? I nearly died. What is your excuse? She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture of deep affection among Valorians. I was too busy making sure you stayed alive to worry about how I looked. Do not ever do that again, Dohyun. Do not ever throw yourself in front of a weapon for me. I cannot promise that. He reached up with one weak hand and touched her face. I would do it 1,000 times if it meant keeping you safe. That is not bravery. That is simply love. News of the assassination attempt spread quickly through the Galactic Concord. The Zorath Dominion denied involvement, but evidence recovered from the attackers left little doubt about who had sent them. More importantly, the story of the human ambassador who had nearly sacrificed himself for a Valorian princess captured the imagination of species across the galaxy. Here was a being with a lifespan of mere decades, throwing himself in front of a plasma bolt to protect someone he had known for only a few months. Here was proof that humans were not the primitive, emotionally unstable creatures that so many had believed them to be. They were something else entirely, something that the elder species had forgotten how to be. Empress Velith called an emergency session of the Galactic Concord. She stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species, her massive form commanding attention, her ancient voice carrying to every corner of the great chamber. For millennia, we have measured worth by lifespan. We have looked down upon the younger species, believing that their brief existences made them less wise, less valuable, less worthy of our respect. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Empress of the Valorian Empire admitting error was unprecedented. I have watched a human spend months courting my daughter, not for political advantage, not for personal gain, but simply because he saw value in her that no one else could see. I have watched him treat her with kindness and respect, asking nothing in return except the chance to know her better. And I have watched him throw himself between her and death without hesitation, willing to give his short life to protect hers. Veleth's compound eyes swept across the assembled delegates, meeting each gaze in turn. We judge humanity by their short lives, their chaotic emotions, their lack of telepathy, or the other gifts that we elder species possess. We were fools. Humans do not need thousands of years to learn wisdom. They do not need a hive mind to feel connection. They choose every day with every breath to love, to protect, to hope. That is not weakness. That is strength beyond anything we have achieved in millennia. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Valorian Empire hereby declares formal alliance with Earth and humanity, not because of political necessity, not because of military advantage, but because humans have shown us something we had forgotten. They have shown us what it truly means to be alive. The assembly erupted into discussion, debate, and in some cases applause. The Zorath Dominion, seeing the political winds shifting against them, quietly backed away from their preparations for war. They had hoped to isolate the Valorians. Instead, they had pushed them into the arms of an ally who, it turned out, was worth far more than anyone had realized. 1 month later, Kang Do-hyun and Princess Seraphil were married in a ceremony that combined human and Valorian traditions. Do-hyun wore a simple dark suit, as was custom on Earth. Seraphil wore flowing robes of woven light that shimmered with every movement. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by trillions of beings who wanted to see this historic union for themselves. They exchanged vows written in both languages. Do-hyun promised to love her for every day he had left. Seraphil promised to carry his memory with her for every day she had after. It was not a perfect arrangement. He would grow old while she remained young. He would die while she lived on. But they had both decided that a lifetime of love, however short, was worth more than an eternity of loneliness. After the ceremony, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City, Seraphil turned to her husband with a question that had been on her mind for a long time. In the throne room, when my mother asked if you desired me, why did you answer the way you did? You could have simply accepted her offer. It would have been easier. It would have given you everything you wanted. Do-hyun smiled, that warm expression that she had come to love so much. It would have given me a princess, a political alliance, a place in history, but it would not have given me you, the real you, the one who sits in gardens at night and dreams of worlds she has never seen. I did not want a symbol or a bargaining chip. I wanted you, and the only way to have you, truly have you, was to treat you as you deserve to be treated. And how is that? As a person, as an equal, as someone whose choice matters as much as my own. He took her hand in his. On Earth we have a saying, love is not something you take, it is something you give. And you, Seraphil, deserve to be given everything. Seraphil felt tears forming in her eyes, the same tears that had been so common in the dark days before Do-hyun arrived. But these were different. These were tears of joy. I love you, she said. I know that I will live for millennia after you are gone. I know that I will carry this grief for longer than your entire species has existed. And I do not care. Having you, even for this brief moment, is worth all the pain that will come after. Do-hyun pulled her close, holding her in his arms as the three sons of Valoria Prime sat behind them. Then we will make every moment count. We will fill whatever time we have with so much love that it echoes through the centuries. And when I am gone, you will not remember the grief. You will remember the joy. They stood together as the sky turned from purple to black and the stars emerged in their countless multitudes. Two souls from different worlds, different species, different ways of existing, choosing each other against all logic and reason. Across the galaxy, species with lifespans of millennia and minds linked across light years would remember this moment. They would tell stories about the human ambassador and the broken princess, about the answer that brought an empress to tears, about the love that bridged the gap between stars. And they would remember the truth that humanity had taught them, that worth was not measured in years, that strength was not found in power, that the greatest gift in the universe was the simple choice to love someone, fully and completely, asking nothing in return except the chance to love them more. Humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology, their adaptability, or their numbers. It was their stubborn, irrational, beautiful insistence that every soul, no matter how broken, how different, how alone, was worthy of love. And that was a lesson worth learning, no matter how many millennia it took.